If you want to thrive in today's marketplace, you need to adapt, innovate, and get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Welcome to the Practice Aligner podcast, where we share the latest hacks and best practices so you can acquire more patients and grow a profitable business. If you want to get there faster, visit practicealigner.com. I'm your host, Luis Trevino, and let's dive into today's show.
Hey.
How's it going? Welcome back to another episode.
Welcome. Yes. So today's episode, I'm going to go right into it because I know we want to do this. Like, there's just so much into it. And I know we both get really excited about this. So today's topic is all about transforming your business from a business to a brand. Mm-hmm. And the difference between that and branding, and how does this really affect a business in the long run?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a good topic. And I think, in the previous episode, we talked about, what are some of the things that you can do to kind of best position yourself for the recession. And towards the end of the episode, mm-hmm. I kind of started talking about like investing in your social media, investing in your branding, right? And kind of just that whole process. And so today we're going to dive into that a little bit more. And so we're pretty excited to kind of start talking about it.
Yes. But before we do that, I want to make sure that if you are liking these episodes, to go ahead and subscribe wherever you're listening podcasts to. We also do these on YouTube. So yes. If you are not following us on YouTube, go ahead and do that. Click there. Make sure to click the little notify bell so that you don't miss on any future episode. And also, we have a specific Facebook group for you. So make sure to go ahead. All of the links are in the description below or in the show notes. And that way you can make sure you're part of this community that we're building with other entrepreneurs just like yourself. And we can build more momentum.
Yeah. Keep growing. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's get started. First and foremost, whenever I start talking about this with any client and talking about a brand, they just think logos. Colors. Yeah. What are your thoughts there? Like, how do you explain to somebody the difference between branding and actually building a brand?
Yeah. And so there's like the actual technical of it of like, okay, I'm going to design a brand. Like, so, oh man, this actually gets like a little intense. So I guess like, actually, what I'm going to do? I'll split it up into two things, right? So the act of like creating and being intentional about how something looks, right? So a lot of the times people say, oh, like I'm going to create a brand, and they focus on the aesthetics. Like, so the logo, right? Like what the logo is, how it looks, the naming, right? The colors. And then I feel like there's another aspect of like brand identity, right? And so, like there is a certain way that, obviously, like if you look a certain way, there's obviously design styles, right? Design styles, if something is more of a traditional looking logo versus a more modern logo, right? Well, then those have specific feelings, right? That are attached to it, right? Like if you use a blue, or if you use a red, if you use a yellow, like
color theory.
Yeah. Like color theory, kind of go into all that stuff, and all those things mean something. And so what I will also say, though, is that there is the brand experience. And I think that is where you kind of get more into of the design of how do I want people to feel when they see my brand, right? And so it's kind of like goes back down to the user experience. And it's definitely a lot more abstract and can get kind of intense, right? But these are the kinds of things that whenever you think of Starbucks, when you think of Apple, when you think of Louis Vuitton, when you think of Dior, Chanel, like these are all big businesses that are built on brand, because when you think about them, there are certain feelings that are associated with those logos. Right? It's just a logo, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. But no, like psychologically, like and internally, like there are certain things that those symbols, and that's what they are. They're symbols. Like those symbols mean something.
Who would have known that just like a regular apple would be luxury.
Yeah. Now it's luxury. Yeah. Tech is luxury. Yeah. And that's kind of like where, you know, a lot of the times, like you kind of you start designing that and start asking yourself these questions of how do I want my patients to feel? Yeah. Like when, you know, cause a lot of the times, like, you know, a lot of times we just have businesses, right? We have, you know, we might look a certain way and that's fine, but how does looking that way make my audience feel?
Yeah,
right?
Which is huge because we keep talking about how, you know, sometimes people don't remember all of the information that you tell them about the specific service, right? They might not know the ins and outs. I mean, if you're a doctor, they might not understand even like everything, like all of the specifics, but they do remember how you made them feel.
Exactly.
Did you make them feel comfortable, excited about this new transformation that they're going to have? And so I think that is my favorite part about design. And I think like I went into it too because of the pretty stuff, like how it looks. But when I realized that there was more to it, this user experience and how like I was able to get design into making a difference in a business and how we make people feel and like make such a bigger impact, that's when like for me it was like a click.
Yeah.
Like I love that.
Yeah, it's definitely a pretty awesome feeling. And I think like, you know, I think considering that, you know, if you're a medical professional, right, like a lot of the times, like you kind of have this background of medicine and, you know, a lot of the times, like we've seen a lot of doctors that create med spas. But then you kind of start asking yourself like, well, the way I want somebody to feel when they come to my med spa versus when they come to my clinic is entirely different. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of the times we don't make that distinction. And so like, you know, really think about that because that's how people feel when they walk into your business. And if you have a med spa and you, or, you know, or if you're an orthodontist, if you're a dentist and you're doing more cosmetic services, well, that's a different feeling associated. That's a different brand that's associated to like me wanting to grow that side of my business. Like, you know, then I need to come off a certain way. I need to look a certain way. Like the business needs to be positioned a different way. And that's when you actually start, like, let's say, you know, med spa example it's a very unique one because I remember we used to have we have a few different clients that are in the med spa space and that they do this really well. And I recall one in particular in Miami, like, she's a medical professional. She's a doctor. You know, all the staffs are nurses, right? Medical practitioners, they're nurse practitioners. But their company was called The Beauty Clinic. And, you know, if you look at their branding, like it's very intentional. Like it's all pink. All the staff wears like a shade of pink, right? And like it's very colorful and playful and like that was all intentional. Yeah, luxurious. Like that was just like, okay, when I want people to come in here, I want them to feel this sense of freshness, this sense of bubbliness. Like, you know, like I want them to, you know, have these feelings when they just see my space, right? Because then it's not just designing how something looks on your wall or a piece of paper. Like it's designing also how, like a big part of manufacturing how people feel is how they interact with the space around them. In this case, all the interior design, you know? Yeah. And so your brand is not just like your logo, it's also how things look inside of your practice, you know?
Yeah.
How your staff treats people, you know,
exactly. And we've talked about this again, I think like sporadically in the podcast, how to, you know, like how just the little things of like even Walmart or like Stripes or whatever, like even though they're not luxurious brands in a sense, they do have this intention that like every time you walk in through the door, there's a greeter. Yeah. Like they say like, welcome to Stripes or like a Walmart, like a welcome. And
Chick-fil-A is another good example, right?
Great one. Yeah. And so these are little things that might just be like, oh yeah, like it's almost sometimes people are uncomfortable, like, oh my God, hi, you know, but it is like a thing, like even with a little singy song, right? Welcome to Stripes. Like everybody knows it. And so, and for Target, for example, the way that it smells, like every single Target in the country, or at least the ones that I've been to, they all smell the same. Yeah. Starbucks, like it's like a huge brand and they are all like intentionally made so that like you walk through it, it smells like coffee, but like really rich, dark coffee. And like it's all intentional.
It's all intentional. And that's how they can charge $5-6 for a cup of coffee.
And people pay for it.
People pay for it, right? And where you can get a $2 cup of coffee at McDonald's or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's what, you know, is really interesting. And I feel that at the end of the day, like there's a reason why, you know, these big Fortune 500 businesses that, you know, like that, you know, all these businesses that we mentioned, like there's a reason why they've been around for years, like for decades. Like some of them have been around for, you know, centuries almost, right? Like big financial organizations, JP Morgan, like these are all big businesses that have a brand associated to them. And like, the reason I feel they were able to do well, I mean, obviously they have their stuff together, but like the branding, you know, has just been something that I feel like has transcended through the years. Yeah.
And that's what we really want to get into today. Like, why is it important to have a brand for the success of your business? Like, what are some of the things that come along with paying attention to these things?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, I think kind of just kind of piggybacking off what we talked about last week, like I feel like at the end of the day, like the businesses that are going to be able to, you know, like survive and thrive during this time, right? It's going to be people that really like double down on their product, right? So we talked about kind of like, you know, ensuring that we're solving problems, we're innovating, but then if you don't talk about and you don't get the word out there of the cool things that you're doing, of how you're solving this problem, then like no one's going to know. And then no one's going to know, right? No one's going to come, you know? And so at the end of the day, like that goes back down to everything that we're talking about. So like how your brand is positioned, but then also a part of your brand is like how you communicate with your audience, right? And then communicating continuously and through like social media platforms, through your advertising, right? But it ends up being all this cohesive messaging, right? And that ultimately is exponential when you actually have a brand that is attached to it, because it just builds on top of each other, like, and it's just kind of like you get this momentum, it steamrolls into something like that's bigger than itself. I'm disrupting your regular programming to do a quick plug. Now, one of the levers that you can pull that will exponentially grow your practice is the art of getting people to say yes to treatment. And one of the ways that you can facilitate this is through having the right financing methods and partners in your practice. So we have done a lot of research and we have found 4 of the best financing methods that you need to implement in your practice to easily get more patients to say yes to treatment. It is our patient financing cheat sheet. If you would like to acquire this cheat sheet, it is 100% for free. Go ahead and click on the link here in the show notes so you can get that cheat sheet today and you can start implementing these methods in your practice so you can get more people saying yes to treatment. Thank you, and let's go back to the show.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think that having a brand in any, like just in regular times is good, because you are already, you know, establishing this like credibility. You're standing out from the competition. You are creating
it's connections. It's a competitive advantage, right? Like, you know, if you offer the same, if there's, you know, business A and business B, and business A just looks, you provide the same service, but business A just looks way more credible than you, specifically in the industries that we're in, then that's the one that's going to win. You know?
Yes. And you create lasting impressions. You create this, you start building trust. And I go back to building relationships, but specifically too, again, like, you know, because of what we talked about in our last episode, you want to definitely build onto your brand during a time of crisis, because it is within those people that you're going to have the most interaction with. And it is in times of struggle that people go towards somebody they trust. And if your business, you have built it to build trust with somebody, then it is more than likely that even through times of struggle, they're going to come back to you. They
100%.
want to even help you out. They don't want you to go out of business. Right?
Yeah, because they like you, right? Like, you know.
And we've seen that, right? Even like through the pandemic, that's kind of one of the things we did to help our clients. And people got a lot of money even with their doors closed because people trusted their business.
For sure. Yeah, 100% spot on.
And I think too, like part of this like branding is like one of the things that as a business owner, obviously we want to strive towards is building this clientele, loyal clients that come back, right? We know that that is like the gold pot. People that end up coming back, whether you have a membership or continuous service or even want to come back for another service. Like that is what as a business we strive for because it's what it's going to bring us recurring money, right? And revenue. So we want to make sure that we're building that, but how do you even get people to come back? Right? And so part of that I feel like is all about the service and how you're making people feel in every single touch point. So bringing in your brand and making it very strategic in every single touch point that you have with them is what's really going to move the needle. And exactly like you said, if especially in times of struggle, right? If people are like there's less people that have the luxury of getting some of these services, then you're gonna have more competition. And people are going to want to keep their money longer, or if they're going to be spending it, they're gonna want to spend it in a place where they trust and where they feel that they're best. So you building that brand for them and building that relationship is really gonna help you exponentially, like just
I mean, it definitely takes work, but it's definitely like worth the investment, right? And so at the end of the day, it's like Billy was saying, like during these times of struggle, it's like we look towards people that can solve our problems, that can guide us, right? And so at the end of the day, it's like if you put an effort into just educating your audience, like that's it, like just educating your audience, like I mean that's already in itself is like you kind of building your brand, you know, you're building these relationships with these people, right? You're getting to know you and like you, trust you. That's gonna resonate with them, right? And at the end of the day, like they're gonna remember you. You know?
Because I mean, we go back to like our philosophy and we keep saying this again and again, and I'm not tired of saying it, but people do business with people. Like, and I tell this also to like our staff, right? I'm like, you know, Everbowl, Engage, they become a concept. They are actually working with you, Luis, with me, Billy, with our staff members by name. That is who they know. And of course, you start building this relationship. And we've noticed that the clients that we have a relationship with are the clients that stay with us the longest.
For sure.
And so it is the same thing. And that's why we go again back and back into like your staff. And when you're choosing your staff, they need to understand your brand. They need to understand your values, where you're coming from.
And I was gonna touch on the value aspect a little bit more, because like another way to think about it is like your brand is like a soul, right?
I love that.
And so it's like at the end of the day, it's like, what are your beliefs? Like, what are your values, right? Like, what is it? Like I said before, like it's just a matter. Like I know this stuff can sound like very abstract and complex, but it's as simple as just asking yourself the question, like, how do I want people to feel when they come into my practice? Right? Like just define 3 things. I want them to feel happy, you know, like I want them to feel safe. And I want them to feel like there's this sense of, I don't know, help me out here. Right? Like, you know, again, I'm just coming on these on the spot, right? But
but it could be like you want them to feel like this is the luxurious place. You want
there you go. I want them to feel like luxurious, right? Like, and so
like movie stars.
And so like, okay, now that I know what are these things, like how can I what can I do to my space to kind of help do that? How can I you know, when I answer the phone, like what are some of the things that I can say when people walk through the door? Like what are some of the things that I can say to kind of give off these feelings, like, you know? And so all of those things are super important and just kind of play a role into that aspect. And then once you have that defined, well, then it's like you can then showcase some of these things in your videos and your imagery, right, and your social media, like all that stuff. And so then just kind of like coming together full circle.
Yes, definitely. And, you know, like one of the things that we talk a lot about, and it's one of like the favorite episodes that we've ever done, is how to stand out from the competition, right? So like we talked about, like this is huge because it definitely, at the end of the day, if everybody around you that has the same type of business as you has the same service, the same technologies, the same specials, almost like the same offers, how do you stand out from the crowd?
Yeah.
And it's with your brand. It is you. At the end of the day, no other business is going to do the things the same way.
Yeah, the way you do them.
The way you do them. Maybe like, you know, specifics, obviously, like the result is the same at the end of the day, but the experience that your clientele goes through is going to be very different. And people are going to stay based off whether they like you or not, and whether you make them feel great or not.
100%. That's it. You know, it's just, that's how it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Enough said. Like mic drop.
So let's go into like actual tangibles, right? And we kind of like did a few examples here and there, but how do you even start with your brand? Like if you've never really thought about this before, like how do you start with like, what do I need to put out there? And I know you did say like, okay, 3 things that you want to make people feel, but is there anything else that people should start thinking about when they want to, you know, start this journey?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say like you can definitely take the shortcut, and this is what everybody does. It's like they, you know, hire an agency, right?
Hey.
Yeah, and like they walk them through the process because, you know, obviously it has its nuances and it's important. But as the business owner, like you have to kind of have that initial vision to begin with, right? Because like you already need to kind of have an abstract idea of like, even if it's a little bit abstract, like, hey, this is kind of like the angle that I want like to have, like this is kind of like the business idea that I have, and I want people to feel certain things. And I think a lot of times it just kind of starts with that, like how do I want people to be perceived, or how do I want people to perceive me or this business, right? And then honestly, even when it comes to getting ideas and stuff like that, like I would honestly say like you don't have to reinvent the wheel, and like you know, like you can get inspiration from any business in the world. You know, you can go to Google, you can go and just search for businesses that are around the globe, even like, you know, like search for other brands, like, you know,
through your own experiences too.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so those are all things that you can kind of come, because at the end of the day, like, you know, maybe you already have like a logo or something, but you like, you know, and we've had this experience. I think we had like this experience twice or maybe 3 times with our clients. When they started working with us, like we started talking to them about who their ideal patient was, you know, how they wanted to be perceived and so on and so forth. And the conversation we had to have a very like, you know, good conversation with them, telling them like, look, I understand that this is who you're trying to go for, but right now your current branding, like the way you're positioned, doesn't really do a good job of attracting those kinds of people. So like, you know, we're going to need to do a whole like, you know, rebrand. Right. And so I think we did that twice, like with 2 of our clients, where we just kind of redid everything for them just because of how they wanted to be, you know, they wanted to attract different people. They wanted to be perceived a little bit different, you know?
Yeah.
And so like
that helped.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was like really great. And so, I mean, like I would definitely say one of the easiest things, and this is what works for me all the time, like I just get inspiration from things that I like, you know, like obviously you like certain things. What do you
appreciate?
Yeah. Right? What do you appreciate? Like, what are some of the things, like, because it's you, like a business is the extension of yourself. And so like, how do you want, what kind of service you want to provide? How do you want to be treated? Right. Like, you know what I mean? And those are all things that you can kind of put into the branding. And so, you know, aside from what I had previously said earlier, like honestly, like, you know, it's kind of just having a good understanding of that. And then I would definitely say get some help, you know, because, you know, obviously there's all these technical things that that you need to do. You will have to hire a designer. Maybe you'll have to hire like an interior designer. And these are big projects that you can't really do by yourself a lot of the times. Like you do need to ask for help from the right people.
Right. I think there are some things definitely that you can like switch around and kind of like use already. And I think we have a whole episode, right, on that. But like one of the things that whenever we do this with our clients, later the comment that I have is like, well, it was so overwhelming. And with you guys, you asked us the right questions. You asked us the questions that we really needed to think about. And I even got one comment one time when it was like, why is she even asking me this? Like, how is this important? Like, what does it matter what I like to do in my off time?
Yeah.
And then now, a few years later, they're like, everything makes sense. Like, we're getting the right people. We don't have as many headaches of clients because I'm attracting people that I enjoy working with. I enjoy having a great conversation with them. And some of them even become friends.
Yeah.
And so that's part of what you want to do with your brand, especially if you're still working in it, like in the day to day. If you probably you have your staff, which is also extension of yourself. But if you are still in it, you want to have these things, right? And also the thing I love about this is that it really helps to decrease your advertising costs. It definitely helps with your sales process. It becomes easier to sell somebody because you've already established yourself as an authority in your space.
And so I say that like having a solid brand makes like every part of having a business a lot easier, right? Because like, you're attracting like better patients, you're attracting the people that you actually want to work with. Like, and it's obviously helping you kind of position yourself in the marketplace, be a lot more credible. The other one that a lot of people don't realize is that it actually helps you hire better. Like people want to work with people that are really good. If you want to hire talent, well then you have to be that part because once you start getting into the marketplace of like people and actually hiring staff that are great at what they do, well then if you want to attract that caliber of a professional, then you also need to not just be that caliber, but you also need to actually like showcase it through your branding. And so it's like people are attracted to that, and so it's also going to help you hire people that have the same ethos, that have the same values, core beliefs, so on and so forth. And that's how you're not just attracting the right clients, you're also attracting the right staff members.
Yeah, that is so true. Even onboarding becomes like less of an annoyance, I would 100%. Say, because and I've had this other conversation with clients all about like staff members and like hiring, right? Which we should definitely do an episode on that because it is hard enough already to hire somebody, onboard them, and then you want to make sure that they understand your brand so they can also give it out, right? Some of these things that we're talking about when it comes to branding can be operational, right? Like every single time somebody comes in, you greet them this way. Every time you answer the phone, you answer this way. You give them like a warm towel or you offer them like tea or coffee or whatever, right? So some of these are operational, but also the way that they're doing them have to represent the brand.
Yeah.
And so, excuse me. And so if you are hiring people that, they're just not great at talking to people or they're not great at texting, which we're huge in, and that is part of your brand, like it's an extension of it. Like how are you responding to people through text? How are you answering the phone? So you have to have these like the right people in the right places. So if your brand is already attracting the people that like, hey, I would love to work there, then it makes it even simpler.
Yeah, it makes it easier. Makes life easier.
Well, I just love this. And I know we can talk about this like in so many ways, but I think we could definitely do a part to talk a little bit more about also like staff and hiring and all that good stuff. But today we talked already a lot about like why you should focus on going from a business to a brand, the difference between branding and a brand, how to add it into your customer journey, how to, why, right? Why even try this? Are there any other things that you want to like add before we finish here?
Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. I think you hit it right on the nail. And so thanks for tuning in, guys. We hope you found this insightful. Make sure to stay tuned for the next episode. Like Billy was saying, comment, subscribe, follow, join us on our Facebook group. If you are currently in, wanting to grow your business, the Facebook group is great because it's a community where we all come together and we all talk about, hey, what's working, what's not working, how can we grow, how can we solve these problems. So if you want to be a part of that community, click the links are down in the description. Go ahead and join us there, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.
Bye.